Have you ever wondered what it takes to transform a hobby into a world-thriving industry, or how gaming transformed from a home to the world arena, creating a lot of career opportunities and communities along the way? Well, so today we're going to dive into that journey, unlocking new perspectives of the field of gaming and esports. So, actually, you are now joining with EvolveX, where we are having a set of conversations just to creating a platform to talk about and to share knowledge about the field of esports and gaming. So, our basic objective is actually to enhancing esports just for the youth engagement in Sri Lanka. So, today with us a very special person who is one of the driving forces in behind Sri Lanka's gaming industry. So I'm happy to have Mr. Ramesh Liyanage, directors of Gamer.LK. So let's explore his story and his experience about this industry of gaming and esports. So at the very beginning, I have already given a little introduction about yourself, but I thought at the very beginning it's good to if you can introduce yourself. So can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you for having me. So I'm actually Ramesh Liyanage. I'm a director of Gamer.LK in-game esports. And so I actually handle mostly the live broadcast and production side of things in esports. But also as a director of Gamer.LK, I have a more overall perspective that I also manage, including the league operations, that is the tournament side of esports, and also things like marketing and supporting roles that also go along with it. So I have a overall sort of understanding and experience.
That's interesting. So I would like to know, tell us a little bit about how your passion towards gaming and esports began.
Yeah, I guess it was back in the day when I was in school. It was just installing the games back then. It's not like a Steam download or a download of the internet now. It used to come in previously in things like CDs and diskettes also at some point. So which I probably don't think the current generation sort of identifies with you with. So which is fun, I suppose, how technology has grown. But back in the day, playing games that actually mostly strategy games and also shooter games that came out back then was sort of very intriguing, and it sort of got me into the whole curiosity of how does this work, like how does the game work, how does this logic work, and things like that. And that sort of actually sparked the curiosity for me to actually work in the tech industry also. And that sort of passion is what eventually led to bring things to where we are, I suppose, right now, because that same passion is still there, and the love for video games and esports itself.
Okay, so that's really interesting. I think that means like you have been doing this thing since you're a child.
Playing games, yes, but esports is much later. So,
yeah, exactly. So actually, I would like to know, what was the first video game you played?
Oh, that's a I think it would be probably, I forget the name of it. It is a strategy game. It was something like Age of Empires, but it was much older than that. It is very old school, 2D sort of pixelated graphics. But then after that, I got into things like Command and Conquer, Red Alert, Duke Nukem back then. Very old games, and then eventually came Counter-Strike, and I think that sort of actually changed a lot of perspective for me, because that's where I actually started playing in a competitive aspect of actually forming a team with some friends and taking part in tournaments. I think Counter-Strike is probably what really sort of flipped the switch from gaming to actually the esports side of things, and that's, I think, the passion is actually with Counter-Strike.
Yeah, so exactly, that's really interesting. So let's talk about these gaming platforms. Like when it comes to today's world, there are a lot of platforms when it comes to gaming and esports. So let's explain a little bit about what are the gaming platforms that we can find in today's world.
By platforms, I'm assuming you mean PC, console.
Yes, yes.
Right. Okay. So that's very interesting because, like I said, back in the day when we started, it was mostly PC. Actually, before PC, I don't know whether the current generation would identify, but there used to be these little sort of like tape decks with a slot for a cartridge where you have like 999 games in one, and you have like things like Duck Hunt and all sorts of like Tetris and car racing and things like that. But that's how I started, actually, I think, before actually PC games even. But from that evolution, from things like Sega and all of that to PC, to then PlayStation, Xbox, and now I think mobile. Because I think mobile is now the biggest thing out there, especially in our region, because accessibility wise, everyone has a mobile phone and everyone is able to download any sort of small mobile game even, and that could be anything from Candy Crush all the way to PUBG Mobile or even paid games. So I think how it has grown over the years is we've seen it being in the huge form factor where you have like a big clunky sort of setup to smaller now handheld devices. And I think overall that really shows how much of people are getting more and more interested in it also. So therefore it's growing and it's approaching the masses in that aspect also. So
Yes, so you had a really good informative answer about those things. So that's really nice. So that's about platforms. So when we're talking about genres, there are different genres when it comes to gaming. So let's talk a little bit about genres and which one is your favorite and why.
I think I already gave away my favorite at the start, but yeah, so genres are also like there's quite a lot. It started off with sort of arcade style games back then. You like go back in time until the retro style games are like things like Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter used to be played on like a 2D sort of setup, but now it's grown. So that sort of fighting sort of simulation game is one genre. Then you have things like strategy games, which are things like Dota 2, League of Legends, Age of Empires, all of these fall under that. There's of course the multiplayer aspect, MOBA it's called, which is also a subset of it. And then you have things like shooter games, which are, like I said, Counter-Strike. Then you have Call of Duty 4, Call of Duty, they're after everything. And also I think since recently we've had like variants of the shooter universe also with things like PUBG and then Fortnite and things like that also, which have added elements from the shooter side as well as the strategy aspects of it as well. So even things like Valorant, Overwatch, Marvel Rivals, all of these have different mixes and mashes of these. So I think overall there are different types of genres that sometimes evolve also, because now I think people understand, I think users want something new, gamers like new sort of challenges also, so they want to sort of navigate and understand more about what is available. So they keep evaluating and updating the sort of games, and even the genres I think are now slowly getting very mixed up, and sometimes you come up with a game, you see a game, you don't know where it fits in the whole genre aspect also, because it's like I said, what people like is what I think developers are trying to get to, and they want their game title to be the next big thing. And of course it's different for titles that are also something that I think you probably should touch on, is there are titles that are single player, there are titles that are multiplayer, like story driven titles. For example, those are video games that don't have a multiplayer aspect, but you just play and you just go through the story. Example would be Cyberpunk. And but then there are games that have the multiplayer aspect, everything from Valorant to Free Fire to anything like that. So it's again two different sort of types, and so it's a very vast and very big universe when you talk about games and esports.
Yes, exactly. So esports is actually a vast field of playing. So now I would like to know, like, when it comes to Sri Lanka, I think esports has evolved very widely. So let's talk a little bit about the challenges. But when it comes to youth, what are the basic challenges they face in terms of esports?
Right. I think just to touch on how it started also. So Gamer.LK started off not as an esports organization per se. It was actually an online forum. Back then when it started, I think there was Facebook had just started, and this was in 2007. So there was actually no place for gamers or anyone to sort of have a community and discuss and be online, because back in the day there was no things like, there was no proper community based platform. So now of course you have Facebook groups, WhatsApp groups, Telegram, everything, right? Discord of course now, but so that's how we started, and that's how we had gamers coming and sharing their screenshots of the gameplay they have, sometimes the best rigs, their machines, they show off all of that, and that's how the community began, and that slowly formed having tournaments, where we had tournaments for some stuff even outside of Colombo, things like Sri Lanka Cyber Games. The idea there was because we've seen these overseas and we've seen how much it has grown. We wanted to bring that same feeling to Sri Lanka and show the youth in Sri Lanka that there's so much potential and there's so many opportunities out there. And so that's how we began, and we've grown from that. And I think the challenges that are mostly there, I suppose, is one main thing is the perception. Even though we've been doing this from that long, it's still esports, and the casual play of games, which is not esports, is a lot of mix up there, and we always get that sort of pressure that this is a bad thing, it's a taboo subject, which is wrong, and that's something we stand up to change. And we always want to, as Gamer.LK, do a lot working with even the national esports body of Sri Lanka, which is the Sri Lanka Esports Association, and we work with them very closely to make sure that this messaging is very clear, that esports is different to casual games, because casual games you don't have a sort of set way of doing it. You just play, just open up a phone, play Candy Crush. That doesn't mean it's esports. It's two different things, and that's very important to have that distinction. And also other challenges we face are with things like accessibility. That's mostly when it comes to PC games, because like I said, mobile is growing very fast and we see more and more people join mobile titles, but PC games have a more harder sort of accessibility, because PC costs to put together. PC is expensive, especially one that supports the latest games, and also there's like huge data caps, which are a big issue, because these new games have very big in size, and therefore there's a lot that a person would need to go through to actually be able to play that. So those are little things. Of course there are much more. I'm just summarizing these for now. I think these are mostly the main things that I can think of at the moment.
Exactly. So in Sri Lanka, there are a lot of misconceptions about esports. So yeah, that's really clear. So let's talk a little bit about your personal experience about esports. I think that would be great. So when it comes to gamers, they normally have their own memorable memories about esports, special winning moments, accomplishments. So can you share a little bit about your memories?
Oh, yeah, interesting question. So for me, I think it was mostly, from the first, I think I played for the first tournament as just a player, but from that point onwards, I've always been a part of the organizing team. And so the perspective sort of shifted from player to organizer. So this view might be a bit biased also, but I think the playing aspect is really something that I really enjoyed. And back in the day, we didn't have big prize pools for tournaments. It was just out of fun that we just put together a team with friends and just play. And I think one memory I had was, I think, Sri Lanka Cyber Games event that we had, and it was we were playing one of the matches, and it was I think Counter-Strike match, and I think it was a very hard moment, and we were down in that round, and I somehow was able to sort of change that, me and one of my teammates, and we won that round. It really felt very happy. It was against one of the best teams in Sri Lanka at the time, so we didn't win the match, just to be clear, just that one round, but I think the one round mattered a lot. and it was like an achievement to have got that against the best team in Sri Lanka back then. So I think, yeah, that's one of the most memorable ones. Of course, there are the more hard memories also, because like I said, organizing is not easy. There's a different perspective to it, and there are a lot of challenges we've gone through over the years, and so we've had those memories also, but we've learned from them. And I think one important aspect is that I couldn't touch on earlier is that because of esports and gaming, I've met so many people. I've networked, I suppose, made so many friends along the way, and who are very close with me right now as well. So I think that's the side of things that it brings also, which is not talked about much because you don't realize it. You get to know someone who's on the other side of the mobile phone or on the PC who you've never met, and then you really become best friends, and you realize they're actually sharing the same sort of interests also, and it's very cool. So I think that's also a side to esports and video games that really is a very not so much talked about thing. People only talk about the other sides, but that's also something I think which needs to be highlighted.
Yes, exactly. So most of people think that esports is only about fun, but
Yes.
there are more than that.
Yes.
So yeah. Actually, you have mentioned about tournaments and competitions. So
Mhm.
I thought to touch a little bit about that. So let's talk about what are the tournaments and competitions what we have in Sri Lanka, because
Sure.
when it comes to world out there, there are a lot of competitions and tournaments. So what are the opportunities young people have in Sri Lanka?
Sure. On the onset to that question, I'd like to also sort of touch on what esports is and what the casual side of things is, just to be clear. So esports is the competitive play of video games, which is where, for example, if you're playing Valorant, you make a team, you have like practices, and you play with a set time frame. So for example, overseas with the esports teams, you actually have a coach, you have sort of like a nutrition plan, workout plan, things like that. It's very structured, right? It's just like any other sport. Like you'd have cricket, you'd have football, volleyball, anything. There is a structure to it. There's a working plan, a schedule, and that's how you work. Casual play is not the same, where, for example, if you feel like it, just take a phone out, start playing a game, and then you don't know how much time you spend on that, or you might end up spending the whole day, which is not esports. And that's the very important distinction that people need to make. It's two different things. And when it comes to tournaments, we have things like Play Expo, which is now happening each year at around December. That's the biggest esports tournament in Sri Lanka. We have over 3,000 gamers who take part from all across the country. That has, I think, the standard is so high at that, because there's like so many people coming to it. You have the very competitive gamers as well as people who are just starting out. So the whole spectrum is there. But we also do some tournaments at a much more, I think, closer to home sort of aspect, where we have, because we realize people come to Play Expo from different forms of life. So one is mercantiles, corporates, you're working, and then either that you're studying at a university or at school. So we actually have 3 different events for these also. We have a mercantile esports, and we also have a university and school esports event. All 3 of these events have been held over the past years sporadically because of COVID and things like that, because we believe that we want to somehow bring the LAN aspect to it, because playing it online is not the same feeling. Whereas when you come to an event, a physical event is much more, there's more energy, there's more enthusiasm, you have people cheering you on, and it's different. Where online, it's just you're at your home or locked in somewhere. So it's very isolated, right? So these are just some of the events. Like you mentioned, there are, I think, events for each game held internationally also, which Sri Lanka gamers from Sri Lanka can take part. For example, PUBG Mobile. They recently announced PUBG Mobile Wildcard Series, PMNC Wildcard, which PUBG Mobile player in Sri Lanka can register inside the game and take part. And if they win, they go to the next stage in that. So those are events that are happening outside of what we organize, but we also support these sort of things. If, like, for example, a team tells us, hey, we won and we are now qualified to this stage, we try to cover it, we try to do articles about it, and we try to give that support as much as we can. That's from like a tournament side. Besides that, we also actually, as Gamer.LK, we do work in the marketing side of things also. We work with brands I'm just mentioning this because when you say esports, people only think about playing. But when you say career in esports, it's not just the playing. Playing is probably part of it, but you have so much more that goes behind it. So for one example is marketing, then you have league ops, refereeing, production broadcast, like a lot of things like that I think people don't see because those are behind the scenes, but those are all opportunities that mostly gamers go into. For example, our company right now, we have around 30 people who majority are gamers, who have played esports, who have taken part in our tournaments and things like that. We of course have some that aren't in that space, but they get into it because of us also. So I think it's a very nice feeling to have that sort of career built around esports, because everyone who we work with, we've seen how they've grown also over the years. And I think our referees and all the other staff from back then to now have also learned new things, and it's a different sort of experience for them. So yeah.
Yeah, so you have touched a lot of things. So that's really nice. And you have mentioned a really nice thing. I like it a lot. Like esports is just like other sports like cricket, volleyball, and all. So we need discipline when it comes to sports. So that's the number one, because most people think that esports is just playing a sport in front of a PC or a computer, but there are a whole lot of things than that. That's really nice. So when we're talking about the esports thing and gaming thing, I think staying updated or being updated is very important, because esports is an evolving field and it's subjected to different types of changes day by day. So as a gamer and as a person who has a lot of experience in this field, I would like to know how keep yourself updated about the world trends and those technological developments and all. So let's share a little bit about
it. So very, very interesting topic and subject to touch on. So I'll break that down into 2 points. One is the game updates themselves. So like you rightfully said, every game, be it Valorant to Free Fire to PUBG or anything, they have regular updates. When I say regular, sometimes it could be weekly, sometimes it could be monthly. Sometimes it could be daily also, because they break things sometimes and they just send a new update to fix it. So the only way to sort of capture those sort of things is I think use online tools like, for example, Reddit, X, Facebook. Their pages usually have these, and since of late Discord. Each game usually has a Discord community which gamers in that game can join and then stay updated about the latest updates, about what the new patch is about, share and find things out. On our end, we have our Gamer.LK Discord also, which is open to anyone to come and, sort of mingle and communicate with others also. Then the second part to this is, like you said, about, I think, the rules and stuff. So when it comes to tournament rules, mostly that is handled by the Sri Lanka Esports Association. So just to give you an idea what that is, it's actually, esports is a recognized sport in Sri Lanka. So it is just like cricket, football, everything else. It's registered as a sport, gazetted in Parliament, and it falls under the Ministry of Sports. So, for example, this year we have the Asia Youth Games, and then the Asian Games next year, which are all games that are held by the Olympic Council and, those sort of bodies which have esports as a title. So, for example, you can win a esports medal at one of these and bring fame to Sri Lanka. So that's the sort of positioning esports has. So the Esports Association sort of provides the governance and the structure to handle all the things like rules and regulations, the national team, and all of that side of things. So for a player to know what the latest rule change is, they would need to follow Sri Lanka Esports. For them to know what the latest game update is, they need to follow the latest, the game itself, the publisher themselves. So these are two different distinctions. And of course, the Facebook, Instagram, all of these handles for all of our, platforms also share these material as we need. For example, if there's a rule change, we usually put that on Gamer.LK also, because we started out as a community and there's still a huge following around us. So we always reshare that sort of material to support. So that sort of awareness is made. Yeah.
Really nice. And let's talk a little bit about the thing called balancing when it comes to esports. Like most of young people face, and they are struggling with this thing called balancing when it comes to esports with their family life or whatever it is. So, as a person who is engaging in this thing, I would like to talk. How do you normally balance this esports thing and your career and your family life and all?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. I think it comes, so I'd like to break that down into, I think, two parts. One is as a university student, and thereafter it's different. But when you're in school and when you're, studying in school, it's two different sort of perspectives, I think. Because one, you need to have control at home through your parents. Because I think that's very important. Now we face a lot of, issues, because during COVID especially, parents give out mobile phones to the kids and then the kids just continue playing. And then after that they say it's addiction. But whereas you need to impose controls on the child, and you need to say this is the time you can play and this is the time you can get the phone if you study for this though. That sort of control is essential. Because if you have that control at that level, then when you grow up and move out to university, work, that same sort of principle applies to you, and you know how to balance. It's not a science as such, it's just self-control. Because if not esports, it will be something else that person will get into. It's just a sort of thinking pattern, right? If you don't have control of anything, it's the same sort of principle. If you play cricket the whole day in the sun, you will have repercussions of that. It's that same sort of principle. So when it comes to balancing, I think one thing that I really talk about with people that I work with and associate is managing a schedule. Because for example, if you're working, if you're doing a job, know that you need to focus on that. And then set aside some time for you to play a game also. Because I think it's important to give that sort of reward to yourself, that if you do a good job within the day, that you need to, have some time for yourself. Maybe play a game of Valorant in the evening or the night. That sort of feeling where you put those imposing restrictions on yourself is very important. And also, I think something that we realize is, or actually personally for me, is that when there are issues sometimes, like for example, things aren't going your way, and you use games as a way to get out of it, as the problems, right? Which I think is something, again, very personal, and something that each person needs to understand. Because again, like I said, if it's not video games, it could be something else. The good thing about video games is you can control it. Whereas other avenues, you can't actually have that same control. So I think a very important thing there is that aspect of understanding and self-awareness of where you stand and the work you have to do. Because like you said, if you're putting your family affairs out, if you're putting your work aside and playing games, that is not something that is, encouraged or even respectfully ethical. Because you're supposed to manage all of that, and that's a sort of given, being responsible, managing everything you do, and then playing video games, esports, taking part. Because like I said, even esports has a structure. Like an esports athlete overseas would have a set period to practice, then they would have a set period to do something else physically, then go out. Maybe there is a very different routine to it. It's not just sit in front of a computer and play for the 8 hours a day. That's not how it works. So
Yeah, that's exactly. And I think there is a whole lot of things to get from your answer. And so we have already taught a lot of things about gaming and esports. So let's move to this thing called streaming.
Yes.
So streaming and esports, they're going parallel, I think. So what do you think about streaming? And do you stream your gameplays normally?
No, I don't think I can, because no one will watch it. Anyway, streaming is, I think, it's all about personality, right? So streamers, it's not just esports players or people who play in esports that are streamers. Because if you look at most of the streamers that stream, they aren't esports athletes, or they are not well-known esports figures. I think it comes from a place of personalities, or people who build personalities rather, that can put themselves out there and sort of express themselves in ways that can get an audience. So for example, if you look at local streamers also, you have people like Mani, for example, who've built personas around his character, and people love that. And then they associate with that character. Even overseas, like if you look at people like Mr. Beast or Ninja, these streamers have always had sort of feeling that they are, even when they play the game, they have that same personality attraction where they sort of get people to watch them rather than the game, because otherwise it's people who watch the game rather than the person, right? That's the difference between an esports athlete streaming versus an actual streamer, like a variety streamer or a personality. Because if it's an esports athlete, you would be watching the gameplay to just get tips. So this is how he puts this flash, this is how he rushes, this is how he switches this weapon. That's just to get an understanding of how the gameplay works. And then you have the streamers, like I said, the people who I mentioned, where you come and watch a stream just to have fun. And just to see him do crazy things and fail maybe, and then make, hilarious jokes out of it. And most of these streamers engage with the chat. So that's, I think, a very important thing, because streaming brought out a side, because before that, when you have TV, for example, you have a very one-way sort of communication, right? You can't talk to your audience. It's unless they have the, traditional WhatsApp me or SMS me this, and then that's sort of very traditional way of things. But streaming brought this whole two-way live real-time communication. So the streamer engages with the audience, and then that brings out a whole different sort of thinking, a psychological effect on the person watching also. Because if you are watching a streamer and you say something, or you say, message, and they read that out, that itself is a hook. Because like, oh, this guy he talked to me and he read my message. So that sort of feeling, because when you look at the younger generations, I am surprised sometimes, because some of my younger cousins and nephews and nieces, like, they know streamers more than they know, like, bigger artists even. And that's very strange, like even bigger than musicians, which is, I think that shows the power of streaming, and the fact that they have built such an audience that goes into these newer generations also is very unique and amazing. And I think that's just going to keep growing. So like you said, esports and I think streaming goes hand in hand, because most often we see even esports tournaments reach out to these these streamers rather, just to get their tournament shown on these platforms, on their platforms, because they know the value that these streamers carry, and that they have such a big audience behind them. So they just want to capture that also. So it's growing, and it will keep growing for sure. So I think that's a very interesting side.
Yeah, so streaming also has grown massively in Sri Lanka when it comes to past years. So let's talk a little bit about the professional value when it comes to esports, because many young people are curious about whether they can build their career on this field or not, and they are very curious about how to start it. So let's talk a little bit about the professional value when it comes to esports.
Sure. Again, I'll break that down into two. One is the professional esports athlete, and the second is everything else, because I think that's how to break it down very broadly. So when it comes to an athlete, I think we have a very structured system in Sri Lanka from the Sri Lanka Esports Association. So these days we're actually having the esports national qualifiers. So just like in athletics, you'd have trials to get into the national athletic pool. We have that same concept in esports. We have an athlete pool, esports athlete pool. So players who want to take part, say for example, in Valorant, or not Valorant, sorry, PUBG Mobile, or a game like even eFootball, they would register on our platform, and on the platform that has the registrations on, then take part in that qualifier, and then if they get into the top 3 places, they make it into the national pool. And then thereafter, if they are selected by the selection committee, they can represent the country at a tournament. So there are various tournaments that go through SLASA, through the Esports Association, things like the Asia Games, Asia Youth Games, then even IESF, which is one of the parent bodies for esports. IESF is the International Esports Federation. They have their World Esports Championships each year. So the team is sent through the Esports Association in Sri Lanka. Then we have one also called the Global Esports Games, which is done by another Esports Federation overseas internationally. And all these are happening with the national team and the national players. So to get into that, you have to play the sort of trials, and you have to keep trying actually, because there's a very competitive sort of aspect to it, and people always try to improve and train and get to that level. So it's a very competitive aspect, and sustaining it thereafter also takes a lot of effort, because like you said, these games keep getting updated, rules keep getting updated, and because of that, if you don't actually keep playing, you get left behind. So that sort of thing is there. And besides that, we've started as the Esports Association to also not be as in like the Esports Association has started out sort of giving out player salaries, which is something just to get that sort of career aspect going. The reason I said we is because I'm actually a part of the Esports Association also, so which is why I am well aware of how it works. So this aspect is at some point to grow into like other games. For example, cricket has a huge player salary, right? Even if they play or lose, they still get paid. So similarly, we want to go down that road, and that will build a career for any player who has that talent. And of course, on the side, besides from the Esports Association and the national player side, you can also take part in things like I said, the PUBG Mobile National Championship, which is self-registered. You play as your own, you register as your own, and if you get to the world stages, those prize pools are anywhere from $1,000 to 10,000 to 50,000 to $100,000, which is shared. So it's huge money there also. So if you build a career, you have that aspect as well. Other than that, if you are not an athlete in esports, everything else has a lot of potential also. Like I said, we have 30 people right now working, around 30, which who are not athletes, who have handled everything from the league operations. So league operations is basically a tournament needs rules, regulations, it needs a structure, it needs to have things in place for if it's a PC game, you have to have PCs, you have to have the necessary infrastructure, internet, all of that is handled by the league operations team, and they will make that work. Then you have the marketing side of things, where they would look at a tournament, create the content that will have awareness for it, and put it on socials, maybe use influencers like streamers, and then get that sort of awareness out. Then you also have things like broadcast and live streaming, because people like mostly in a esports game, you have, for example, Valorant, only 10 people are playing, right? But it's the masses that watch. It's so many people that can watch it. So even overseas, you see that like aspect of broadcast and production is huge. So that's another side of things. So it's the same as any other sport or any other sort of event-based entity, where there's a lot of things that people can get involved in. So everything from graphic designing to 3D to coding, because there's a lot of coding side to it also, not exactly making the games, but for example, for broadcasting and production, I can give you an example. Now, say if it's PUBG Mobile, each player in the PUBG Mobile map at that point, if you have 64 players, each person's weapon information is shared through an API, which is pulled and then used for graphics, which are generated through code on the fly for the broadcast. So you have sidebars, you have panels, you have little aspects. These are all built by us, for example, for our broadcast. It doesn't come in the game. So those are all avenues that a person can get into. It's not just purely the playing, is what I want to emphasize. There's so much more that happens, and there's so many aspects to it that we've noticed how people have shifted from other fields also, because it's very interesting, and it's no 2 days are the same. Right, the work changes, and it's very interesting, especially with the games that come out overseas and how we work here. So it's very new and fresh always.
Yeah, exactly. So esports is evolving, and a very wide range there is. So let's give a kind of advice. If you have to give a kind of advice, what would you give, especially for young people who's watching right now, who wants to start gaming after this discussion? So let's give. So
I think I already touched on it mostly, but I suppose the most important thing is balance. And I think control of yourself, being self-aware, and making sure that you don't, you don't sort of compromise on your life or anything else in your life for playing, video games or esports, because that's not what is expected, and that's not how it works. So you need to make sure that if you are curious about taking a path in it, and it could be not just playing, I mean even anything else that I mentioned, the work that we do for our tournaments. Of course, when it comes to a tournament, I'm sure you all have experience in event organizing, even at university or school level. It has a very big crunch at the end, right? And sometimes you have to stay up and have late nights to do stuff. That's different. That happens even with esports events. It's, I think, a bit tenfold on that, because there are so many things that can go wrong. So it's a bit of a crunch at the end, and that grind is there. But beyond that, as a day-to-day affair, it needs to have control, it needs to have awareness, and be sure that you keep tabs on sort of the latest updates also, and be aware of what's happening. And because sometimes we've had instances where even esports or other games shut down after some time, because for them it's a money making thing. They need to make profit out of it. So there are sometimes the studios close down their games, and so make sure that you keep updated and make sure that you know what the situation is globally, how it is happening locally. And I think the most important thing out of all of that is, if you're curious about esports, the playing side of things, make sure to take part in tournaments, because I think that's the only way you'll improve. Playing online is different to playing actually at a venue. So if you come to Play Expo, that atmosphere, that enthusiasm, that energy, that sort of people screaming and shouting and that cheering, that is different. Because when you are at home and isolated with your headphones or just in your world playing a game, it's different to actually being there around with people. And that setup is something you need to experience, and that's how you develop, because you play at a level with others who are also matched with you and who have that sort of same competitive aspect and spirit. So that will really help you improve and push you further. So I think most important thing, balance, and then keep playing, and making sure that you have I don't want to say a huge roadmap ahead, but plan ahead. Because if, for example, if you at some point feel like you don't want to play, I just want to say that sort of experience you got as a player will not go to waste, because there's plenty of esports jobs around. Even in Sri Lanka, with our company itself, we have so much that we've given, and we plan to also. So because like I said earlier, we have the brand In-Game Esports. I started off at the start. We do work outside Sri Lanka, actually, a lot of it, mostly now. So there's so many aspects that a person can get involved in. So even if you at some point think of retiring, even if it's at a young age, you can always, count on getting an opportunity with the experience you had, the knowledge you had in gaming and esports, that can be put to use elsewhere. So that's something that I want to leave as a message.
That's really nice. I think that advice will be such an inspiring message for our young people. So before wrap up our discussion, I thought to know, what are your future expectations, plans that you have in this field?
So I think one dream we had, like when we first started back in the day, was getting esports recognized as a sport. That's off the list now. That's checked and done. I think there's a lot of other things also which we now have that we want to do, like, bring down maybe a huge esports tournament to Sri Lanka, create our own. We've already started on some of these, and we are getting there. Of course, with COVID and the whole economic crisis and all of that happened, we've sort of had to take a step back in some of these, but we're still pushing on and we're still going forward. And I think mostly it's personally, just this is from my point of view, most of the work that we do, especially as Gamer.LK itself, is that we create awareness also for esports that will not probably be seen in this generation sometimes. It might be next, the ones that come after, who would have a much easier way to get things done. And from my experience, even in the Esports Association, I think from the governance side of things, now getting it recognized, to then moving forward thereafter and seeing the way forward, is like right now there's a lot that we have to go through to, for example, even the Asian Games, Asian Youth Games, for Sri Lanka esports to be allowed to go. There's a lot that needs to be pushed, because even though it's there, sometimes we have restrictions here saying if you can't win a medal, you can't go, right? So there are things like that we need to sort of navigate. But I think at some point with this effort we have now, I think personally I feel that it'll be much smoother for the future generations as they come forward. And personally, I think something we as a company, as Gamer.LK, want to do is, right now we have started and we are getting there. We want to service the world. We want to be able to have any person who wants to get some sort of esports activity or service done anywhere in the world to just reach out to us, and we give them a really good sort of service. And that's something we actually are in the progress of doing, and we will bring down more work also. So I think that's the sort of aspect we have as a company, and our vision is to grow, keep growing, and provide more opportunities. Because as we grow, that's the important thing. It's just about creating more opportunities for youth to make their career out of esports, and it's growing, and we've seen year on year how it has, and I think we'll keep going ahead, and welcome you all to also keep tabs on us, and maybe who knows, join us at some point.
Exactly, and really interesting. So I think we should remind about what is Gamer.LK. So Gamer.LK is a huge company, and I think the only driving force behind Sri Lanka's esports revolution. I think I'm correct. So we wish you all the very best on you and your company's expectations and future plans. So thank you so much for joining with us and sharing your insightful stories and experience with us. So that would be really nice. So this is not the end of our episode. So we'll be give another set of episodes as well to talk about what is esports and what is gaming and all. So until then, see you in next episode of EvolveX.